Ever since its release, the Master 3D Environments course has become a place where I decided to share everything I know about CG landscapes and how to make them in Blender. There are many environments in it that I have worked on long and hard to make as epic looking as possible, squeezing everything I could from good old Blender. And my computer too. One, however, that made me stretch my 3D artistic muscle the most was this one, the Grassland chapter, focused on introducing you to the amazing geometry nodes, a brand new Blender 3.0 edition. That wasn't the only thing though. I really wanted to get a whole city into my shot very quickly, so I decided to figure out how to grab literally anything from Google Maps to Blender. Ultimately, it has become one of my favorite looking shots of the course, and so in this short video I decided to jump in once again and break down its creation for you. And by the way, some months back I've done something very similar to the first workflow chapter of the course, so you can freely watch it on our YouTube as well. Something that the students of the course know well from each chapter, yes, reference gathering. It served me well for every single environment of the course. So I spent a wonderful evening in company of various images of wetlands and grasslands, throwing them into PureRef and studying how such environments look in various lighting conditions. Ultimately, I decided on my favorite golden hour time of day because I really wanted to have these glints and highlights on the plane as well as these big moving cloud shadows. Right after that, it was geometry nodes time. I definitely knew I wanted to have this large grassy plain in the foreground of my shot. So I started with it, exploring one of the most common uses of GeoNodes for terrain creation, the displacement. Essentially, something like we've done with shader displacement in the previous chapters of the course, but now directly manipulating the vertices of our plane object using the set position node in GeoNodes menu. You can see it right here, and it is all basically about setting the proper direction to offset your vertices, sourcing the object's normals, and then have a random generator actually go about pushing various vertices up or down randomly. And random variation of patterns, that is something that our trusty noise texture does best. Now, after adding some more subdivisions to the surface and playing with contrasts and endpoints in color ramp, I was able to get something like this, a rough displaced terrain. This is a great start for almost any environment creation one does in Blender, getting a plane to displace. Then it's mostly about mixing in more noise textures in various ways. In our case though, we didn't need anything too elaborate, so just mixing two noise textures was quite enough to achieve a bumpy plane like this. The second biggest challenge of the chapter was finding out how to scatter assets onto this plane like you would regular particles. The answer was the distribute points on faces node, which basically makes a cloud of points from our geometry onto which you can input any object you like. In the chapter, I prepared for the students several vegetation, stone and tree assets, so those were already taken care of. Then it was basically about instancing these assets on the generated points. By the way, one uses instances to ease the load on the computer, the same way you would use children in particle setups. Instances are basically identical copies of your original object with data linked to it, instead of unique meshes, each with data of their own. Those would make my scene pretty heavy. Well, and then, once I was able to distribute one asset, it was fairly easy to distribute the rest of them by just duplicating the geometry node network and switching the type of asset in the source node. I of course played with various methods of placement and distribution, but that was all basically just a matter of experimentation, which is most of my workflows. Having it all visible in a network like this, everything directly controllable and procedural, is by the way the true reason to use geometry nodes. And this scattering is of course just scratching the surface of what those little boxes can do. For example, in a bonus chapter, I decided to show you how to achieve a dynamically changing fence with them. And you can see that lesson for free directly on our YouTube channel. Once I was done with the foreground, it was time to mix in some other techniques for the midground and the background of the scene. The sky is actually an image placed very far away from the camera, so that the parallax, the way it moves relative to the foreground due to perspective distance, looks correct. I then took it and, just like I do every time, I added some shape keys and made its top move to the side like this, while this bottom remains stationary. I animated the shape key, and this way you can fake movement to so many sky backgrounds. I do basically nothing else these days for my scenes. For the very far mountains, I use 2D images as well, but the closer you get to the camera, the more 3D objects you need to use, otherwise those 2D planes would be pretty apparent. So using the techniques from chapter 8, as well as some free mountain assets I share there, I added some visual interest to the sides of the composition with these two hills. These are basically again just displaced planes, but this time using a displace modifier, into which I input a displacement map generated in World Creator. By the way, on my own YouTube channel, I just shared a basic free workflow for this tool, so definitely check it out if you're interested in a great way to generate displacement and color maps for large-scale terrains. One note on the camera, I used a super useful add-on by none other than Ian Hubert. It is called Shakify, and it adds wonderful handheld shaky animations to your camera, which you can adjust to your liking. This way, I achieved a slightly more natural camera move than if it was just linear. You know how you can paint vertex groups on your meshes and then scatter particles just on those regions? Well, I use these midground hills to do a similar thing, only using, you guessed it, geometry nodes. So first, I just recreated the distribution network I used for the plane, but this time I scattered trees. To only limit their growth to the vertex group I painted though, I focused on these output attributes here. Those you can create from the group input node here and drive them into any attribute your network has. In my case, it was this density parameter of the points. Then you can start controlling it with various data present on your mesh, including the vertex groups you've painted. Nice. And that was what I wanted. After that, it was all about that one special workflow I've been hoping to discover for years. Finally, I found that you can simply download a software called RenderDoc, and upon some tinkering with the way your internet browser uses GPU, you can then directly source any 3D data from the Explorer into RenderDoc. You just find a location, in my case the famous Canary Wharf of London, and grab it. Then just download a special Maps Models Importer add-on, and you'll be able to import the format RenderDoc gives you directly into Blender. I don't know about you, but this is just pure awesomeness. Though I must warn you, do not attempt to sell these models or use them in commercial projects. It would not go well legal-wise. With that done, I've just added several last cool elements to my scene. First, these wonderful cloud shadows. It was as easy as making a plane like this, putting noise texture into the transparency socket, playing with the contrasts, and then put it somewhere where it obstructs my scene. And since you want just the shadows, you can uncheck everything except the shadows from the ray visibility here. With a little bit of animation of this plane, I was able to quickly make these beautiful moving shadows in my shot. And yeah, that's one thing I haven't mentioned yet, the lighting. I used one HDRI that I also use all the time, and it's this Spruce Sunrise, and you can download it for free from polyhaven.com. So I just plugged it into the world shader, I rotated it so that the main sun source comes from the side of my scene like this, giving nice glints and highlights to the objects and the city. Still though, it felt like some areas were not highlighted enough, so I used enormous spotlights with a lot of power, bringing out the center of my grass plane, the center of the city, and even this hill on the right, which seemed a little dark to my taste. Using spotlights with low spot size is a great way to add fast sources of light to your scene that will not drain your computer performance too much. I also recommend setting this blend high so that the edges of the spotlight are soft like this. Finally, I added this large box spanning my whole midground and the city, and onto it I added a very thin fog volume. That added this much needed atmospheric effect. The rest was just cosmetics. I used a reflective plane with some noise texture added into a normal socket to simulate this water. As with every workflow I present, in the last parts I focused on rendering the final passes into animated sequences. And rendering them out, I put them into Blender's compositor and focused on improving the result there. For example, I added all sorts of these glowy layers, much needed vignette, chromatic aberration, and more. You can learn about all that in this free introduction to compositing on our channel. And with that, I was pretty much done with this shot. So, I hope you liked this breakdown of one of the many environments I show you how to create in my Master 3D Environments in Blender course. And yeah, if it piqued your interest, definitely check out the full trailer and intro for it, as well as the full outline at our webpage. I hope to see you next time, and until then, stay creative my friends. Martin out.